Yeshua, Mary Magdalene, Miriam, and John ben Zebedee were escorted through mysteriously lit passages to the vertical shaft that is now called the Well. They were then required to proceed on their own through a convoluted ascending tunnel to what you know as the pit of the Great Pyramid. The ascent to the pit was fraught with challenges because they had successfully completed the various initiations that had taken them through primal fears. They easily passed upwards against the gravitational and magnetic forces, which pressed down upon them. There were times when they felt almost weightless, their bodies vaporous. Then they found themselves in complete darkness, a darkness so dense that a flame could not be sustained. Hi, and welcome back to Empowered Spirit Healing. My name is Paula, and today we are continuing on with episode 13 of reading Anna, the grandmother of Jesus. We are getting pretty close to the end of the book, and it is getting very exciting. Today we're going to be going through when Jesus goes to Egypt and has the Great Pyramid initiation, which is just absolutely fascinating. So I'm really looking forward to reading this to you. And then I'm super excited to get on to the next book, which will probably be maybe only 2 more episodes away, maybe 3. We'll see how we go for time. But I'm very excited to get on to the next book because there are, let's just say, there's quite a few interesting things in the second book that's not included in this book. So it's really fascinating. I haven't finished reading all of the second book. I've just probably read the first few chapters of it, but already it's pretty exciting. So I can't wait to get on to reading that with you all. So let's continue on with chapter 32, the Great Pyramid Initiation. So it was that Yeshua, his brother James, and his cousin John progressed through all of the advanced enlightenment initiations of Horus, representing the human journey that unifies and ascends the spirit-matter connection as an embodied soul. From Dendera they went to Abydos, the ancient temple site that commemorates the resurrection of Osiris. Here they participated fully in the rite of the sepulchre. As I have shared with you before, the rite of the sepulchre was not new to Yeshua, whose first sepulchre initiation took place in Mount Carmel when he was 12 years old. It was my privilege and responsibility to introduce my grandson to the ancient ritual of dying and resurrection. He completed the final rite with Maha Babaji in India nearly 12 years later. Going through the process again in Abydos gave him new insights as well as an opportunity to assist his brothers and cousin. Just as I represented Isis in Yeshua's first experience, so it was that Isis herself brought forth the full presence of the Divine Mother. Within the tomb at Abydos, where these 3 faithful friends lay for 3 days. As the wings of her love enveloped them, all fear stilled, and the life force within her vast energy field resurrected every atom into a new awareness of eternal life. Yeshua owned every thought and reclaimed the energy he had previously projected outwards into the astral realms that hold discordant emotions and disempowered thought forms. In the secret chambers of Abydos, Yeshua met with enlightened beings who have directed the seeding of ascension codes into human DNA, including his ancient ancestor Akhenaten. He also took the initiations of the elements of earth, air, fire, water, and ether. He went deeply into the atomic structure of his body and found the entire cosmos within himself. He studied the infinite weaving of light into the ascension matrix that is called the flower of life. Through the understanding of electromagnetic fields, sacred geometry, and the threefold nature of light, sound, and color, he took his body completely into a field of light that was impermeable to involutional spin factors. In this way, Yeshua took complete control of the forces of life and the illusion of death. He continually contemplated and spoke of mantra that he received in India. I am the resurrection and the life. After Abydos and a rather leisurely journey by barge down the Nile to participate in the temples of Memphis, Yeshua, James, and John rested for several months in Heliopolis, awaiting the return of the others who were still completing their initiations. Miriam's spacious home offered quiet and peaceful surroundings that allowed integration of all that they had passed through. Yeshua enjoyed this time of repose, solitude, and familial sharing. If the trials of Britain and the Himalayas had been intense, the Egyptian initiations taken all together over a relatively short period were even more arduous and trying for the soul. Well, I can imagine because it seems like it's pretty intense. So I bet he's enjoying a bit of respite for a little while. Yeshua was grateful for all the preparation he had received, his companions' support, and for the wise teachers who had supported his journey into self-mastery. Now he welcomed a time of refreshment and reconnection with his cousins Miriam and Mary Magdalene. With Miriam he found a deep, consoling peace, and with her husband Nathaniel he could relax into laughter and celebration. With Mary Magdalene, Yeshua felt an awakened desire for courtship. They both sensed a divine timing in their being together in Egypt. Now a spirit of freedom helped them to cultivate an intimate, though celibate, relationship. During this time of renewal, while waiting for the rest of his companions to arrive back in Heliopolis, Yeshua was taken inwardly to council meetings with the brother sisterhood of light. He was introduced to the master plan for the public demonstration of resurrection and ascension to humanity. The plan was designed to assist a very unconscious and stubborn people to know how they might overcome every fear. Since the greatest fear was of death, he was told that a complex, multidimensional process would be undertaken which would indelibly imprint the resurrection and ascension principles into all life through all time and space. Thus it was that a foundation was laid in Egypt for Yeshua's later mission. Yeshua's final initiation in Egypt, as is the case for all initiates who are sufficiently prepared, was in the Great Pyramid. This, the largest of the pyramids, which represented the chamber in the human brain where enlightenment occurs, had been designed long ago to serve both as an individual ascension chamber and as a planetary ascension chamber. Although it stands somewhat dormant in your day, its true function will be finally restored when a sufficient number of human beings are ready to make the transition from separation consciousness into unity consciousness. Well, that's very exciting. It will be great to learn the truth. And I'm also hoping that when enough people reach a certain level of consciousness and becoming more united, then we will be able to access all of the special records that are kept under the right paw of the Sphinx. When that pivotal point is reached, a chain reaction will occur. synergistically awakening other vortices that focus energy within various etheric grids located on, above, and within Mother Earth. Well, that is a really exciting time to look forward to. And I'm hoping also that when that happens, it will just be strong enough that certain negative energies that don't belong on our planet will bugger off. I will now give you a brief account of Yeshua's initiation in the Great Pyramid located at the necropolis of Giza on the west side of the Nile. Nathanael travelled overland to the Great Pyramid with provisions and a wagon, while Yeshua and 6 companions began their underground journey by accessing an ancient underground chamber below Heliopolis. Standing by the heavy iron door to the chamber was a very old guardian priest who had been awaiting them. He took them through a series of chambers whose doors operated by sound frequencies and compatible resonance. How fascinating is that? They passed through unharmed. Then they journeyed through a long, narrow, descending tunnel under the River Nile, where they occasionally came upon catacombs heaped with bones and the decaying corpses of those people who could not afford burial in the necropolis. There were various junctions, some gated, others were dark, gaping holes. Everyone carried lamps, small flasks of drinking water, and sufficient faith that they would somehow get through this ordeal. Guardian priests met them at 3 different junctures. The initiates were tested to determine their readiness to proceed, and then the stationed priest led them through the next segment of the long journey. When they finally arrived at the very large chamber located directly beneath the Sphinx, many hundreds of feet below the surface, they were astonished that they no longer required their lamps. Here they were greeted by a conclave of 12 ascended masters, including Seraphis Bey and Thoth, who showed themselves in physical bodies. That is so cool. Yeshua recognized this room from the childhood stories that his father and mother had told him when he lived earlier in Egypt. He was told that the Sphinx had a consort twin. The still visible Sphinx represented the masculine solar principle. The second Sphinx, which represented the feminine lunar principle, had been desecrated. Wow. So that's really interesting. And isn't that so just representing where we're at today, where we are just run by, a patriarchal society? And it's just crazy to think that there was a Sphinx, a second Sphinx that represented the feminine energy, and it's just been destroyed because that's what the darker powers, let's say, that's what they wanted to do. They don't want us to be in balance. But it's actually incredibly important for us to balance out our masculine and feminine energy. And I'm not talking about men and women. I'm talking about within each person. It doesn't matter who you are, what race, what color, what sex you are, what you identify as. It really does not matter. What matters is that you have a balance of feminine and masculine energy within yourself. Wow, that's just really mind-blowing to think that it's been destroyed. It's just very representative, isn't it, of where we're at. So it says that her stones were used to build some of the smaller Giza pyramids. The masters issued various instructions and passwords which took the initiates to the underground city further below them. After they had received refreshment, each was assigned a specific role that would support Yeshua's initiation in the Great Pyramid. James went alone into another chamber below the Sphinx, where he was taught how to maintain certain sound frequencies that would be broadcast into the Great Pyramid. Priests led Andrew and James ben Zebedee through adjacent connecting tunnels leading to chambers within the small and middle pyramids. Wow, it's like they've got this full-on underground city going on underneath these pyramids and sphinxes. It's crazy. They're at these strategic points where coordinates and harmonics could be struck. They would also broadcast specific sound frequencies into the Great Pyramid. I just think this is just fascinating. Yeshua, Mary Magdalene, Miriam, and John ben Zebedee were escorted through mysteriously lit passages to the vertical shaft that is now called the Well. They were then required to proceed on their own through a convoluted ascending tunnel to what you know as the pit of the Great Pyramid. The ascent to the pit was fraught with challenges because they had successfully completed the various initiations that had taken them through primal fears. They easily passed upwards against the gravitational and magnetic forces, which pressed down upon them. There were times when they felt almost weightless, their bodies vaporous. Then they found themselves in complete darkness, a darkness so dense that a flame could not be sustained. Each one felt completely alone. In order to continue, it was required to remember and to put to use all the wisdom they had gained throughout all of their previous initiations. There were times when they felt so faint, dizzy, and disoriented that to go on was an immense test of fortitude and communal support of one another. Onwards through passages that your sonic devices and psychics have detected, the companions passed. Their extrasensory abilities were heightened as they progressed. They began to experience a luminescence radiating from within themselves and a golden photon energy called vril, like VRILL. I mean, the only time I've ever heard of that was the Vril Society, which was around in the 1940s or whenever the whole stuff happened in Germany. So that's interesting. So it's called Vril by the Atlanteans, emanating from the stone walls, almost like an ethereal phosphorescence. They also began to hear sounds which echoed in such a way that, if they listened carefully, they were guided in their upward ascent. It was a test of refined discernment on the various tones and the geometric angles that were impressed into their minds, which created a kind of mental map. It's almost like when the whales communicate with each other and they kind of see a map in the ocean. It's almost like that's what they were doing here. When the pit was reached, they rested, meditated, and grew in resolve to complete their mission. Miriam took her assigned position just below the base of the pyramid, directly under the king's chamber far above. Miriam had mastered the skills of concentration and had passed most of the levels of the rite of the sepulchre. Because she had Yeshua and Mary Magdalene's blessing and knew Nathanael was praying for her just outside the pyramid, she reassured herself that she was not alone. However, feeling the heavy blackness enveloping her beating heart and remembering the stories of those whose hearts ceased to beat in this place where she now lay, caused doubts to rise like monstrous shadows on the screen of her mind. Whew, I don't blame her. I'd be having some fears coming up too. Also, I just wanted to apologise. The road I live off a main road and it just seems to be very busy today. So if you hear the background noise of engines very loudly driving past, I do apologise. Okay, so Miriam embraced her fear and became Isis in the Great Pyramid's abyss for 3 days. And I just have the utmost respect for these people. What they put themselves through in these initiations is just like, wow. They put themselves through a lot. I don't envy them, but I do envy them. I don't envy what they go through, but I do envy the abilities that they have. And, that's just life, isn't it? It's like, if you're happy just to have a pretty ordinary life and achieve ordinary things, then you can just go about being an ordinary person. And that's fine. No judgment to that. But if you want more from life, it's like you really have to put yourself out there. You really have to work harder than others. Even like with this YouTube channel, I do this as well as part-time jobs on the side because it's probably, I'm not quite monetized yet. So it's all just, if you want to go above and beyond and achieve above what other people generally achieve, you really have to do the work involved to get there. And it's just, yeah, man, these are seen community people, and not even everybody in these seen community people. Only some people had the desire to really push themselves and excel. I just think it's fascinating. Okay, so this was Miriam's supreme test that prepared her for the assignment she would fulfill later, when the present hidden initiation was outwardly dramatized for humanity to feel and see on Mount Calvary, which we all know about. Yeshua, Mary Magdalene, and John ben Zebedee pressed on. They ascended the low, steep, inclined passages. At last they reached the chamber that you call the Queen's Chamber. Again they rested and meditated for several hours until they received an inner signal that it was time to proceed. In accordance with his instructions, John remained in the Queen's Chamber, where he began to intone specific sound frequencies. I just love that they're using sound frequencies as part of this initiation in the pyramid. Because I love sound frequencies, I try to infuse them in all of the soundscapes that I create on my YouTube channel because of their powerful healing abilities, and also in the personalized meditations that I create for people, which are available on my website if you are interested, if you would like some extra help with your personal healing journey or your spiritual growth journey. I do create personalized meditations. I create personalized soundscapes. I also create what's I've termed a hypnoscape, which I'm not the original person to do that. I know that there's other people out there that call them hypnoscapes as well, but a hypnoscape is basically a meditation with a soundscape underneath. So, it's a meditation with a soundscape following that, so that when you go to sleep at night, you can listen to your meditation and then it just turns into the soundscape. So you never have to get up, because sometimes if you're doing a meditation before bed, you fall asleep. So it's just a really cool way to help integrate the healing and the meditation. It just helps to integrate it through your whole sleep cycle, because I infuse it with binaural beats, which puts you in a more relaxed meditative state. And I infuse it with different healing frequencies based on what you're needing, what your intentions are. And then I also put subliminal affirmations in as well. So you can't hear the affirmations, but they're just under. So your subconscious mind can hear, but your conscious mind can't. And so that just means it's just working on reprogramming your mind all night long. So it's very, very powerful. Anyways, I just thought I'd share that because I recently updated my website and I have all of those products available for anybody that's interested, and we will continue on. Okay, so Yeshua and Mary continued the symbolic path of the initiate as they ascended the grand gallery passage, and then, stooping low, finally entered into the king's chamber. The king's chamber was designed to function as a great resonance chamber. Once they were inside, they began to sense the glorious combination of sound frequencies that were being intoned by all those in their variously assigned places. including a number of priests and priestesses who were stationed in hidden chambers within and beneath the Great Pyramid. In this way, all aspects of their mental, emotional, and physical bodies were attuned and calibrated to the interdimensional music of the spheres, thereby aligning their consciousness with specific solar, stellar, and galactic energies. That's just mind-blowing. How incredible. Although much of the energy that had been transmitted to initiates in former times was no longer available, the energies generated by planet Earth, when augmented by those of the Ascended Masters, were still sufficient to transform the Great Pyramid into an extremely powerful virtual reality chamber. Miriam and Mary Magdalene had each undergone initiation in the King's Chamber 8 years earlier. Consequently, they were now qualified to serve as the attending priestesses of Isis at Yeshua's initiation. After leading her beloved cousin to the red granite sarcophagus, within which he would remain for 72 hours, Mary Magdalene took her position at the doorway of the king's chamber and sealed the entrance energetically with mudras and intonations. Acting as a Magdalene high priestess of Isis, trained in the powers of concentration and simultaneous realities, she energetically connected all the participating disciples into a grid of oneness. Everyone who was involved in supporting the individual and planetary scope of the Great Pyramid Ascension initiation began to transmit frequencies that focused vibrations of light, sound, and color into the sepulchre where Yeshua lay. I can't imagine what it would be like to lay in a type of coffin for 72 hours. I know that there's these floating pods that people can go and lay in for like an hour or so, and you're meant to do it without your phone, no devices. And I think even that would be challenging for most of us because we are so used to just being on our phones all the time, and, you know, just being able to shut off from reality for even an hour can be challenging. Doing it for 72 hours, I just can't imagine what that would be like. The king's chamber began to vibrate with a subtle timbre as a multi-dimensional geometric matrix was created around the sarcophagus. Within this atomic accelerator, Yeshua's physical body began to glow with translucent light, as it was gently infused with the divine blueprint of the cosmic Christ. And for those who witnessed according to our capacity to receive this blueprint, we too were awakened to our full potential. I'm just finding this chapter really mind-blowing. So just excuse me. Now I shall say further that the sarcophagus within the king's chamber was positioned in such a way that the subtle energies that were generated by the powerful vortex of the Great Pyramid passed directly through the pineal gland of the initiate within the sarcophagus. Thus, far from serving as a monumental tomb for one of the ancient Egyptian pharaohs, the Great Pyramid was and is not only an initiation chamber, but also an extraordinarily powerful ascension chamber. So when we all went to school and we were taught that these pyramids were tombs for pharaohs that had passed away and all their earthly treasures that they wanted to take to the other side, no, it turns out that they were actually initiation chambers and ascension chambers. I mean, I always had a feeling that there was something more to the pyramids than what they'd been telling us, but I never expected this. In this instance, however, the initiation ceremony was not simply a matter of facilitating Yeshua's individual process of spiritual awakening. In a carefully orchestrated way, Yeshua's crucifixion, resurrection, and ascension initiations were facilitated in the Great Pyramid so that the entire earth and all of humanity could be seeded collectively for planetary ascension in your day. So he was doing this not just to help prepare him for the crucifixion, but also to help the whole of Mother Earth to ascend in our time. I would ask you, my friend, to contemplate how you might take advantage of this seeding of ascension consciousness in your daily life. Surely, when you realize that you have access to great assistance each day, your challenges can be met with faith and hope instead of fearful dread. Every soul that was destined to play a significant part in supporting Yeshua in the public enactment of crucifixion and resurrection was present at this particular point of preparation. In addition to Yeshua and his close companions, there were those of us who knew how to teleport or bilocate who came to the Great Pyramid to participate. Others who played lesser roles came in their light bodies during sleep and later remembered fragments of what they had seen in their dreams. For all consciously participating, this rehearsal assisted us to be emotionally detached so that we could play our parts in the divine plan. In this way, every step of Yeshua's mission was orchestrated and imprinted into the planetary consciousness. Although the essential portion of his initiation within the king's chamber took place within the first 24 hours, Yeshua remained in the sarcophagus for another 48 hours, in accordance with the sign that had been given to Jonah the prophet. As the story goes, Jonah had a profound shamanic experience of death and rebirth in which he spent 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of a great fish that had swallowed him. Let us also remember that as Yeshua did, so did the others. During this time, Yeshua and the other supportive disciples experienced much of the public resurrection demonstration that was yet to come as an interactive virtual reality. We were open to the pivotal choices that aligned our lives to our highest personal realization and planetary service. When the Great Pyramid initiation was completed, all participating inside made an easy exit through a concealed door. As we bring this summary of Yeshua's Egyptian initiation to a close, I wish to further re-emphasize the importance of cohesive group action, which this story illustrates. Yeshua could not have accomplished what he did without the willing companions who had come together to prepare themselves to be most qualified support team possible. Likewise, we could not have achieved what we did without the vast consciousness, focused dedication, and impeccable example Yeshua provided for us. While I have said and continue to stress that all that Yeshua did, you may do also, and even more may you do. Allow me to explain that your initiatory experiences may express differently than Yeshua's. Yes, Yeshua was and is an extraordinary being whose task encompassed a planetary and cosmic scope of ascension activity. Your personal life, which just as importantly will contribute to the success of planetary ascension, may not impact as many as did Yeshua's. While your responsibilities to humanity may not be as great as those of my grandson, like Yeshua, you also have the same responsibility to increase in self-mastery, co-create harmony where there is conflict, and add your enlightened, loving presence to the collective ascending body of consciousness. And I could not agree more with Anna at this point. I believe it is the responsibility of every single person on this planet to do their own inner healing and to clear out all the shadows that we have, to learn to love and accept ourselves just the way that we are, and have compassion for ourselves, because when we do the healing work, when we clear ourselves inside, we then show up in the world as a better person. We show up with more love, more patience, more compassion than when we are angry and tired and stressed out and get triggered by traumas that we haven't healed yet. And I really, truly believe that with everything that's going on in the world right now, I don't think any of it's going to stop while we're so busy fighting out there. Yes, there is so much bad stuff going on in the world right now. And, we can blame one government, we can blame another government, we can blame a country, we can blame another country. We can blame the elites, whoever they are, we can blame dark energies, we can blame whatever we want. But at the end of the day, none of that's going to stop until we heal and clear what's going on inside of us. Because on a metaphysical level, we attract and create out there what we're experiencing out there, what is going on inside of us. And it's so easy to walk around and judge others and think other people should be doing different, the government should do different. But that's all just a big distraction. It's all part of the play. We're in a play right now, a movie, a game, whatever you want to interpret it as. We're part of the play, and it's all going on out there. But until you show up and do the work and clean up what's inside of you, the things that are going on out there are not going to change. It's all just distraction to focus on that stuff. Don't focus on that stuff. I'll check in every now and then to see what's going on in the world. And when I do my talks with Bryce, she fills me in on what's going on in the world. But it's, what can you do? What can one person do? We can't go to America and say to the president that we want things to change. We won't even be allowed in because you got to get past all the security. And what's he going to do? He's going to do whatever choices that he wants to do. The only way to make a difference in the world is to heal yourself. And yeah, sorry about my little rant, but I feel very passionately about this. And I think sometimes I just get frustrated because I just feel like everybody is just so busy looking out there all the time. And that's what they've done that on purpose. The people that rule the world right now have done that on purpose. They've set things up so that we're so busy, we're so tired, we're so stressed out that we don't have time to sit, go within and sort out the shit that's going on inside of us. And we're so distracted. So we just think, oh, that person's wrong and they're doing this and this conspiracy is true and this is happening and that's happening in the world. At the end of the day, does it really matter? I mean, I have gone down so many rabbit holes of conspiracy theories. And after several years of doing that, I started to think, well, okay, this is all very interesting, but is this helping me? Is this actually helping me on my personal growth? No, it was just making me more angry. The more I found out about the terrible things that have been happening in the world behind our backs, just made me more angry. And if that makes us more angry, then that's just feeding them even more. So they're happy. They don't care. They want us to go down the rabbit holes and to be so busy and distracted by all of that that we're not working on ourselves. But the more I've been learning recently, the more important it is for us to go within and worry about us. because that's the only thing we can change. That's where our true power is. So, just have a think about it. Okay, as a son of man and an elder brother, Yeshua set an example of what is possible for every human when there is an alignment with love and unity. Because of the cosmic scope of Yeshua's and Mary Magdalene's mission to assist all humanity to awaken, they in return received cosmic levels of assistance. So I just want to quickly add in again and interrupt again, but I just want to share how important that is. When your mission is for the right reasons, when you want to help awaken humanity by healing yourself, there is so much cosmic assistance that is there willing to help you. You just need to ask. Whatever your mission is, you will also have the support you require to succeed. In this awareness, you, like your elder brother, can receive encouragement and hope along the way until you realize yourself as a Christ. There is no requirement for you to go to the Great Pyramid in this lifetime. Yet, I would ask you, have you had experiences in which you felt as though you were in a sepulchre, your limited identity and life dying as a new identity and life emerged? Have you recognized a pattern of increased willingness to align your ego nature with a greater power? An enlarged sense of caring for others' well-being and an ability to be more compassionately present in all your relationships. In these simple, though significant ways, you are also successful in your Christ initiations. What a fantastic ending for that chapter. Okay, so now we are going to continue on with chapter 33, The Way is Prepared. Now I wish to bring you up to date about the good news regarding Mary Anna's marriage to Ahmed, an Egyptian Essene brother from Heliopolis. Shortly after arriving at his Aunt Miriam's home in Egypt, Yeshua became acquainted with Ahmed, who sat next to him at one of Miriam's well-attended feasts. Instantly, Yeshua could feel his mother's presence and knew this sensitive and devotional man was a suitable husband for her. Without delay, an invitation was extended. Ahmed travelled to Nazareth, and within 7 months, the very happy couple were married. After completing their Egyptian initiations, Yeshua and his companions enjoyably spent 6 months in Greece, the Aegean Islands and Ephesus, returning to their destinations in Galilee in the autumn of AD 24. While they were in Mount Carmel, I was delighted to find Yeshua and Mary leisurely walking hand in hand in the garden and openly showing their affection for one another whenever they were together. Everyone nodded their approval, though to be quite honest, there was still an aspect of my human nature that secretly desired Yeshua and Mary to settle down into a relatively stress-free life of home and children. However, I also knew that the greater part had been chosen, which caused my heart in equal measure to both soar and tremble. Responding to the community's questioning looks and self-conscious smiles, Yeshua announced his formal betrothal to his beloved Mary, which would occur on the November full moon. So it was that 2 years after marrying Ahmed, Mary Anna invited close family and friends to attend a simple yet elegant betrothal ceremony for Yeshua and Mary Magdalene in her home in Nazareth. Glad to have the loving assistance of her older children, a radiant Mary Anna held her year-old son, John Mark, on a swollen lap, pregnant with her 9th child. After the festivities, Yeshua and Mary Magdalene announced that they would soon be departing to the Orient. All of the companions who had gone to Egypt with Yeshua agreed that they would also travel with them. Yeshua explained that it was important to contact various masters in India, Tibet, Nepal, and China. In the late spring of AD 25, they joined a caravan of traders that was going to India. The trade route followed the same course Yeshua had traveled before from Damascus, Palmyra, Seleucia, Kabul, and then the Khyber Pass to the river Ganges. During the winter months, they gratefully rested in Varanasi and enjoyed Joseph the Younger and his family's warm hospitality. After their welcomed rest, they pressed on to their various destinations in the Orient. The pilgrimage greatly expanded everyone's awareness and appreciation of the Buddhist teachings of Siddhartha Gautama. They had spread throughout the lands they visited. They also found the brilliant consciousness of the Chinese Taoist master Lao Tzu highly illuminating. One of the treasures Yeshua brought back to be placed in the Mount Carmel library was a well-worn manuscript of Lao Tzu's Tao Te Ching. This cross-pollinated synthesis of potent spiritual teachings and practices of inner alchemy from Egypt, Greece, Britain, Palestine, Mesopotamia, India, and China had a profound influence on the now mature Yeshua ben Joseph and his devoted disciples. Isn't it so fascinating to hear all of these incredible masters and teachers that influence Yeshua and his life? John ben Zacharias returned to Qumran from Mount Sinai after Yeshua had made it known to John in a dream that he would soon be returning to Palestine. That's so cool. They just communicate with each other through dreams. John was told in the dream that it was time to begin his public ministry, which would prepare the stiff-necked Hebrew people for a demonstration of the Christ. As Malachi had prophesied, a forerunner would sow the seeds of resurrection through the law of purification and repentance. In this way, the old fear-based identity and behaviors would be encouraged to die, to be cleansed and transmuted, in brackets, in order to be raised up into a new creation in God, at one-ment, with the one I am. So it was that John ben Zacharias, who's also known as John the Baptist, Joachim's nephew, through his eldest sister's daughter Elizabeth, was quickened in his knowing that it was time to relinquish his hermitage status. It was his lot to take a message of redemption, as he understood it, to the children of Israel, in brackets, Isis, Ra, Elohim. During the autumn of AD 26, John went forth with a small company of dedicated followers, including Lazarus, the brother of Mary Magdalene, and Judas Iscariot. All of these brothers had accompanied him to Mount Sinai in the spring of AD 22, where they had remained in seclusion for over 3 years. Now rumors of John's fiery, charismatic presence and the outspoken exuberance, which had won both favor and criticism from his Qumran brotherhood, went before him like a mighty wind, stirring sleepy consciousness awake. Having first gone out to the scattered Essene communities around the Great Salt Sea, he then ventured farther afield eastward of the River Jordan to Edom, Perea, Decapolis, and Caesarea Philippi. Word was left with every Essene household and community in Galilee, Samaria, and Judea, including Jerusalem and Jericho, that the coming of the teacher of righteousness was soon at hand. Needless to say, this news had a profound effect on those who heard it. The rumor quickly spread that the event of the long-awaited Messiah was imminent. Now, if you can imagine John wearing the camel hair's tunic of an anchorite, with his own hair uncut, eating the most ascetic of Essene diets, and delivering unfaltering sermons spoken with the voice of a lion, you can begin to understand the unforgettable impression he made on everyone who met him. Wow, he sounds like a very interesting character. To understand John more deeply is also to have an awareness of his orientation to life, which, like most Essenes, especially those who lived in the Qumran community, was to be heavily influenced by a Zoroastrian or Nazarite warrior of light perspective. Such ones were often nursing the wounds of political persecution, and it was easy for them to see this world through dualistic eyes. This view sees the earth as a battleground upon which the sons of light and the sons of darkness wage eternal war. As with most warriors, however, they often were blind to the awareness that the real battleground within the consciousness of duality is waged within the breast of each soul. So kind of like when I went on my little rant before, it's the same thing. So John the Baptist saw the war happening out there, and he was angry at them, and he was on a mission to correct everyone. And that's all well and good. I do agree that we can't just let people push us around. We need to stand up and fight for what we believe in. But at the same time, you've got to heal and work on the war that's going on inside of you. Because when you do that, things show up differently in the world around you. And look, I'm just saying this from my own personal experience. I mean, the person that I was 10, 15, 20 years ago is so different to the person I am today. I've always been me, but I have been on a 15-year journey of healing myself and working on myself. So my life is showing up so differently than how it used to. I attract different people in my life than I used to. I attract really beautiful, amazing people into my life, people that I love and care deeply about. I don't really have any toxic people in my life anymore because I've done a lot of work on myself, and I still have so much to work on. So I'm not saying I'm no better than anybody else. It's not about that. But it's just that, you will just notice things showing up differently. Different opportunities will show up. Things just seem to work out for the better. You seem to have enough money for everything that you want to do. You seem to have, beautiful people in your life, and relationships that could go really bad, like with your children, can actually be really great when you start healing what's going on inside of you and taking responsibility for you. So yeah, it's just interesting to hear all the different personalities from Qumran. If the internal war is not acknowledged and harmonized, then it is often projected outward, where it is seen reflected as discordant dramas. John's temperament and adopted Nazarite bias, conditioned by the wounding he suffered as a child when his father was killed in the temple at Jerusalem, resulted in an uncompromising attitude that bordered on militancy. So it was with passionate ardor that John implored the Jews to repent of their stubborn and arrogant ways. To fortify himself and to prepare his audience, John began his mornings in prayer and meditation. Often he was unavailable to the increasing crowds that began to press upon him until the sun had reached its zenith. When the sorrowful and anxious hearts of his audience were filled with eager anticipation, he began preaching his electrifying message. Every question was answered with undeniable authority, passion, sincerity, and forthrightness. Just when he had repentant petitioners ready to believe that he was the long-awaited Messiah, he made it unmistakably clear that he was but his humble servant. He was a harbinger sent to prepare the way of the teacher of righteousness, who was mightier than he had ever hoped to be. It was the Messiah who would teach the people the rightful use of God's energy flowing through their bodies, minds, and souls. It was one greater than he who would demonstrate the resurrection of their true relationship to God. John then introduced the uninitiated into the Essene purification ritual of washing themselves in water as a token of dying to their old creature nature of hatred, lust, and greed. For those made new in their consciousness, it was explained that they would be like the sun rising up from its nighttime watery grave and bringing forth its light to unconditionally shine its gift of life on all. The ritual John performed then is what we now call baptism. I will give a brief explanation to clarify the misunderstandings that some have regarding how our ritual washings were done. It was our custom in circumstances where there was little water to immerse our feet and hands in a basin or a specially constructed font filled ankle deep with water. Then we bent down and took a handful of the water which we poured over our heads. We paid particular attention to cleansing our aura and the 7 seals of our energy centers at our heads, along the spine and front of our body, so the chakras. We also invoked the purifying and empowering presence of the angels of the elements, earth and sky, and those who govern the tree of life, in whose sephirific spheres we stood. In situations where there was plenty of water, we allowed ourselves to be fully immersed in deeper water with the assistance of a fellow Essene. The washing ritual was practiced every day, not just once in a lifetime. Nor was a mediating priest required for the ritual to be sanctified. So isn't that really interesting that they practice that every day? Not only just for hygiene reasons, obviously that's good, but it's interesting that they also used the water to cleanse their aura and their chakras every single day. And it's so important that we do that. And we're just not taught that. We should be taught in school how to meditate. We should be taught about our chakras and our aura. And just imagine what the world would be like if every child was taught to clear that every single day. Just imagine where we would be at a spiritual level if that happened. I can only dream. Because John was teaching the practice of ritual washing to many who had not experienced it, and because he preferred the symbolism of full immersion that was possible in the Jordan River, he acted as an assistant mentor for those who came to him. He insisted that he was also here to help them to open and prepare their hearts for the greater baptism of the Holy Spirit's fire, the anointing of divine light that results in full enlightenment as a Christ. That Yeshua, not he, was capable of demonstrating. John never intended to create a ritualized dogma about how to purify one's heart in order to know the kingdom of God within. No, but the churches decided to run with it. And the churches decided to run with it because it's another way that gives them the power and takes the power away from ourselves, doing it ourselves. When we can just baptize ourselves and do a ritual washing every single day when we have a shower. For those who experienced his words and partook of the ritual washings, each person responded differently according to their particular religious or political orientation. For example, those Essenes who were spiritually aligned with John felt nourished and uplifted by the courageous manner in which he boldly spoke the truth. On the other hand, those Pharisees, wise in their own eyes because they considered themselves to be experts regarding the law, felt challenged and perplexed. And those Sadducees, who were currently enjoying positions of wealth and status, felt threatened to the core. However, those zealots who were feeling oppressed by the Roman rule saw in John a saviour who could redeem Israel from the scourge of foreign governance and restore an independent Palestine. There were also those who chose to dismiss John's words altogether because they simply were not ready to open their minds and hearts to a new way of life. They consequently rejected him as a ranting and raving madman dressed in the attire of the outcast poor who lived on locusts and honey in the desert and baptized endless numbers of people day after day. Yeah, he sounds a bit nutty, but his intentions are pure. Foremost, John was not easily dismissed. His dedication was intense, his attitude fearless, and his countenance fierce when challenged. Good on him. I love it when people are strong about what they believe in, you know, as long as they're not rude or hurtful to others about their opinion. Such was the force of nature that rested in Yeshua's forerunner. And it was to John, now called the Baptizer, at Bethbarah on the river Jordan, that Yeshua and Mary Magdalene came in the autumn of AD 28. Yeshua and his companions had returned from the Orient the previous year. For the most part, they each went their own way as they continued to prepare for the great work ahead. Yeshua and Mary Magdalene spent most of their time in seclusion at several Essene outposts in the desert where there were healing springs. They enjoyed giving their bodies and souls the deep nurturing that had been long overdue. Nathanael and Miriam returned to Mount Carmel and rejoiced in their reunion with their son Benjamin, who had been dedicated to the service of God within the inner sanctuary as preparation for becoming a rabbi. The others returned to their villages and began in earnest to court and marry appropriate partners who could support them in Yeshua's ministry when the time came. The year had passed quickly, and the time of the opening of the way had come. After sending runners, Yeshua's companions with their married or betrothed wives gathered at John's camp at Bethbarah. New to the group of inner disciples was Andrew Bar Jonah's brother Simon, also known as Peter. Because Peter is so widely known in your day, and so little is spoken of him in my story, I will share a portion that may assist you in understanding his personality. Peter's focus, which had formerly been directed outwards on supporting his family as a fisherman, now drew inwards after he had an almost miraculous change of heart when his brother Andrew, who had returned from Egypt, encouraged him to spend time with Yeshua. In doing so, Peter had a spontaneous quickening, a kundalini opening, that forever changed him. Peter's lack of experience with esoteric initiations and his very strong patriarchal bias that feared the feminine aspect of God continued to haunt him the remainder of his days. Particularly difficult for Peter was his tendency to compare himself unfavorably with the disciples, especially the women and Mary Magdalene in particular, who had matured and exceeded him in their spiritual discipline and powers. However, his continued experiences of direct revelation and his leadership skills placed Peter in a position to be of great assistance to Yeshua. So it was that in order to fulfill all things spoken of by the prophets, my grandson Yeshua went forth with his cousin John, who had prepared the way, until they stood together in a deep, edifying pool of the river Jordan. John announced to all that this was the Anointed One, whose sandals he was unworthy to unlace. Everyone pressed close, filled with wonder and amazement that such a man who looked no different than themselves could be the Messiah. The crowd looked on with bated breath. Even the chattering of children and crows ceased. All was still. Then, allowing John to support him, Yeshua laid himself back completely in the water as if it were a grave or a sepulchre. At the moment my grandson stood upright, a large thundercloud overhead parted, and the sun sent forth a brilliant ray of light directly over the place where Yeshua and John stood. The light was so dazzling upon the river's rippling water, and the illumination of these two men so stunning that a suppressed sigh escaped the lips of those gathered along the banks of the Jordan. Then a chorus of hosannas was sung that unforgettable hour. John solemnly raised his right arm, signifying that he was now acting as a witness to Yeshua's obedience and humility, which was an example for all. The sunlight continued to illuminate as though it were a stage spotlight. As the heavens opened, John announced that he had heard the word of God the Father, saying that he was well pleased in his Son. He also confided that God the Mother, the Holy Shekinah, had descended and rested upon the chosen one as a dove. So, in like manner, was Yeshua's baptism recorded in your Holy Bible account. However, no mention is made about Mary Magdalene. I therefore add my witness that she also went to be baptized by John, and thereby to set an example that she was equal with her mate. Few recognized her as an adept or what she was doing at the time. However, many wondered when the same signs that occurred with Yeshua were seen and heard following her baptism when she rose up out of the water. Then all of the other disciples who were present were baptized with John's assistance. So isn't that interesting? Mary Magdalene was just as important as Yeshua, and she had the same things happen. But of course, they missed that one out of the Bible. Thus, a remarkable day ended with a new chapter in Yeshua's public life began. After a time of solitude, cleansing, and fasting, Yeshua and Mary Magdalene gathered their support team that you call the 12 disciples. However, it has been removed from your records that these 12 men also had female counterparts. As I indicated earlier, after their return from the Orient, those companions who had been preparing for their work with Yeshua began to find their appropriate mates who could provide the required feminine balance that Yeshua and Mary Magdalene insisted upon having. So it was that a number of close inner circle began to grow until there were 12 men and 12 women. And then as the populace began to hear of the miracles and teachings that Yeshua and Mary Magdalene wrought, the circles of 12 men and 12 women multiplied, so that the required assistance to help to those who sought healing of bodies and souls could receive in equal measure. Although I did not have a mate to whom I was married, I also became a member of the second circle of 12 men and 12 women disciples. Over the next 4 years, the 12 multiplied to a total of 144. 72 male, and 72 female dedicated disciples. What a joy it was to my soul to release my position at Mount Carmel and to be in intimate contact with Yeshua and Mary Magdalene, as well as others of my beloved family, as we travelled among the peoples of Palestine. That's the end of chapter 33. Now we're going to read chapter 34, Yeshua's sayings. It brings me great pleasure to share some of my fondest memories of Yeshua's deeds and sayings that were accomplished during his last years on the physical plane. These remembered sayings are given to nurture the seed of light that has been placed in you from the beginning of the world. Thus, I share with you a few of the numerous experiences in which I was present to hear and bear witness to my grandson's life and teachings. This covers some of the highlights of his brief ministry in Palestine, which began in the late September of AD 28 and culminated in the early April of AD 30, just a year and a half later. Of these experiences, I offer a small portion so that you may increase your awareness that there is a fuller meaning, power, and grace within his works and words that you have not yet received. Your holy scriptures reveal only a meager portion of the bounty that Yeshua freely gave to those with ears to hear. For those whose soul is hungering and thirsting for love's liberating light, I invite you to explore those lesser-known works, such as the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Nag Hammadi Scrolls, which reveal more of the Son of Man translated directly from the rich Aramaic language he spoke. I will now share more fully about Mary Magdalene, who, as a mature woman, adopted 3 children. As you recall, I have told you that she had been the founder of a number of orphanages, hospices, hospitals, and sanctuaries for the homeless and society's outcasts since she was 19. With the financial generosity of her father, Mary Magdalene converted his estate near Magdala into a hospital and orphanage. With her mother's assistance, my granddaughter also expanded her Bethany home into a sanctuary and refuge for the infirm of mind, body, and soul. As with Magdala, it was also a place where unwed mothers could birth their unwanted children and where their children could be sheltered until they were old enough to make their own way. Some of these children who showed a desire for the Essene monastic life were then taken to Qumran. What an incredible, amazing thing to do. Yeshua and Mary Magdalene adopted 3 homeless children after their betrothal. These 3 children were called Joseph, Judas, and Miriam. There always seemed to be many children closely gathered around my grandson and granddaughter, wherever they went among the crowds of people. One of my favorite memories that occurred at the time of the early ministry is that of Yeshua and Mary Magdalene's marriage at Cana in December of AD 28. To be sure, it was a glorious event. The 4 years since the betrothal had allowed both families to accumulate a large dowry. There was also the dowry of John ben Zebedee and his betrothed bride, Abigail, who were planning to be married on this same occasion. Abigail was the daughter of Mary and Cleopas, who were also Yeshua's disciples. Cleopas was a brother of Joseph ben Jacob, who's Yeshua's father. It was decided that the spacious ancestral home in Cana, which had formerly belonged to Jacob and Lois, Yeshua's paternal grandparents, were the best location for most of the guests who would be travelling from afar. The estate was now Cleopas's since his widowed mother Lois had died while Yeshua was in India. Mary and Cleopas invited over 100 guests. It had been years since our close and extended family had all gathered together, so it was truly a grand reunion. The several months prior to the wedding, were devoted to preparations, and the following several weeks were given to celebration. Just before the sharing of marriage vows, Mary Magdalene performed the first public anointing of her beloved with spikenard, a pungent and rare healing herb that she had gathered on the recent pilgrimage to the Orient, when she was in the foothills of the Himalayas. From the plants, Mary had extracted their essential oil and made ointment that was placed in alabaster jars. Small glass vials were also filled with the pure oil. The containers were then hermetically sealed and carefully stored so that they would arrive in Palestine safely. On this sacred occasion, she took one of the vials, broke the seal, and poured the entire contents on Yeshua's head and massaged it into his hands and feet. Her profound love was clearly demonstrated as she openly wept and dried her beloved's feet with her long, dark, mahogany red hair. We were all touched by her devotion and wept freely with her. And clearly my grandson, who also openly wept, received so deeply of the supernal love that flowed through Mary Magdalene that his entire countenance began to glow with a radiance that matched the sun at midday. As the formal celebration continued into its third day of feasting, dancing, and storytelling, Mary Anna learned from Abigail's mother that the wine was running low. Right away, she went to Yeshua in the courtyard as he was enjoying a light-hearted exchange with John, the other groom. Then, as my beloved grandson looked directly into my eyes, I heard his mother say to a nearby servant, "Whatever he tells you, do it." Yeshua asked to be taken to the wine cellar, where the casks of wine, both grape juice and fermented wine, and large earthen jars of water were kept cool. After ordering the servants to fill several of the water containers to the brim, he then asked to be left alone. I was not present while Yeshua worked with the angels of the elements to change the water into new wine, or the grape juice that was preferred by those Essenes who kept a strict diet. But I did drink the new wine when it was served, which was sweeter by far than that which had been served previously. I was not surprised by my grandson's abilities with alchemy, since he had turned water into wine one season at Mount Carmel, when the grape harvest had been shortened by a severe early frost. This was one of Yeshua's first public miracles, as his spiritual manifestations were called. I love hearing that, because I think I've mentioned before in the previous episode that I always had a feeling there was an explanation to these so-called miracles. They're not actually miracles. Miracles are things that can happen every single day for us. And it seems like magic or miracles, but there are actual scientific explanations for it. I mean, being able to alchemically turn water into wine, I'm sure that's something that many alchemists and magicians, people that have trained and learned how to change matter, it's just changing energy from one form into another form. So when you think about it that way, it's actually just really, really simple. I mean, we do it when we put water from running water into the freezer and it becomes ice. It's just changing from one form to another. So changing water into wine isn't actually that complicated, but because we're not taught how to do it, like I wouldn't know how to do it, but because we're not taught that, it seems like magic to us. Come with me now as I collect a dear memory of a glorious spring day as Yeshua spoke to a large crowd that had gathered on a hillside overlooking the community of Bethsaida. From our vantage point, we could gaze out onto Galilee's great freshwater lake and the surrounding hillscape. Near the top of the knoll, there was a broad, open, concave area which created a natural amphitheatre. Those of us who were his close disciples assisted the growing crowd to find places where all could listen while reclining on blankets or sitting on stones. It was one of those unexpectedly warm days that favor Galilee in the springtime. A gentle breeze blew across our faces, rippling the hillside grasses as if they were an extension of the sea below. Swallows and seabirds darted and winged overhead amongst wispy white clouds and floated past a dazzling bright sun. Yet this sun, which graced all with its warmth and light, could not equal the brilliance that I perceived emanating from my beloved grandson's face. I fixed my gaze upon him, eagerly awaiting his voice that moved through my heart as deep, silent waters. Many who came were skeptical, coming out of curiosity or by the invitation of a friend. And then there were the ever-present sick and lame brought by their relatives. Yeshua, Mary Magdalene, and the other principal 24 disciples, women as well as men, ministered to the infirm first. To assist in whatever way I could was my soul's greatest pleasure. Even while I ministered, I could not take my eyes away from my grandson and granddaughter as they walked among the people. Yeshua and Mary's simple robes were basically identical, both made of finely woven, bleached linen. Their hooded outer cloaks were woven of finest white wool. Each kept a dark cloak to cover their white clothing, as well as a change of typical Galilean garb to put on whenever it was necessary to pass through the countryside incognito. Thus they travelled not out of fear for themselves, but rather that their service to humanity be unimpeded. The women who crafted and washed the disciples' white garments considered their labours a great fulfilment to their hearts. Now, as I looked upon our master's teachers and observed their radiant tanned faces against the dazzling white of their robes, I felt as though I were truly gazing upon the purest of holy vessels. Miriam and several other women sang and played musical instruments. Children as well as adults joined in the chorus, and where there was room, people danced. Our hearts were gladdened by the joyful feelings which opened us to the light of the sun, sweet bird song, early spring grasses and wildflowers, and the delight of having the Anointed One in our midst. He paused from time to time to pick up a small child, placing them on his shoulders. How the memories stirred in my breast as I remembered previous occasions when my playful young grandson had done this long ago. So did we pass the early afternoon hours until Yeshua was satisfied that everyone was ready to receive his words. Mary Magdalene was content to play her supportive feminine role, as was her custom during their ministering to a crowd. Silently and with great power, she enhanced the energy for her beloved as she invited us to sit down. He took his place where he could be seen and heard by all. By this time, many more people had arrived from near and far, filling the entire area of the natural amphitheatre and its surrounding ridges. Finally, when everyone was calm and at peace, he began to speak, projecting his voice as had the ancient prophets long ago. Children of the one God, it is your faith that has brought you here. Mighty indeed are the works of all whose faith is as a mustard seed. Though your faith may be small in the beginning, if given nourishment, it will grow into a great bush wherein the birds may nest. So it is that I am come unto you because your faith is sufficient for the hearing of my words. As with the mustard seed, may my words find a place within your fertile hearts and minds, so that they may germinate and become fruitful in your daily lives. Thus do I speak to you that you may be glad of heart and strong of spirit. For to walk in the way of the teacher of righteousness is to remember no more your idleness, which yields a poor harvest, nor your rebelliousness against Father, Mother, Creator, whose strong arms bear you up from day to day. If you have ears to hear and eyes to see, you will know that I say only that which my Father gives me to say to you. What you see me do also comes directly from him. And the mother of wisdom, Shekinah Sophia, the Holy Spirit of truth within you, shall bear witness that this indeed is so. Therefore, hear well these teachings. Let go of those cords of guilt that bind you in judgment to another's trespasses, and release your neighbours from the hidden snares of your judgment's clasp. Raise not your arm in protest when your cloak is taken from you, but give that which is your surplus also. Be not cast down in weariness when one who is needy asks of your supply, but be glad of heart that you may do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Know your true self and the passionate depths of your innermost being. Gather up all the energy that your small self attempts to hoard or scatter, and offer up all that you are to the giver of life. This is the first commandment that empowers all others. And then likewise, with generous compassion, bless that friend who is drawn to walk beside you, offering you a reflection. Bestow on your neighbour those good things that you would have the Father, Mother of all impart unto you. You are loved, even that shadowy self who still practices arrogant separation and has not opened the door to our Father, Mother's hearth and the nourishment found therein. This is the creative principle out of which comes all righteousness, meaning the right use of energy. No other commandment is there than to love the one God within you and to love and serve the one creation you also are, so that you may have life more abundantly. I ask you, how else can you know peace and prosperity within your soul? Believe more so in the witness born within your own heart than in that which you perceive to be miracles wrought at my hand. For I do nothing of myself. It is the Father, Mother, Creator within me that does the work you see. Likewise, it is the same Creator within you who multiplies your fortune and who cares for you day by day. Consider the gentle lilies of the field. They neither spin nor weave, yet their raiment is beautiful to behold. Observe our brother the sparrow, how it freely wings through the heavens overhead. In innocence and trust it glides upon the wind, supported in all things whither it goes. Therefore be not anxious, for with your worry you cannot purchase more time against the morrow, nor does your anxiety add credibility to your stature among men. Rather be still and go within to the treasure of your heart, and you shall be given all things. Your Father, Mother knows wherewith you are needful, and gives to you even before you ask. When in unity and gladness you are merged with your innermost desire, in the moment of realizing it is already yours, then surely it is given. Prove me herewith that whatsoever you ask of your Father, Mother, in the spirit of love, shall surely be given to you according to your faith and works. Therefore seek, and you shall find. Knock, and the door shall be opened. Ask, and you shall receive. Measure for measure, multiplied without end. Look all about you and weigh in the balance of your heart all that is richly provided. For even in your trials there is a gift. Even in your stumbling block you may find strength by taking time to account for the seed you now harvest. You may find your way to return to the Master within, who gives you the pearl of wisdom. Lay not up for yourself the treasures of the world, where moth and rust corrupt, and where thieves break into a steal. To do so is to become poor in spirit and aggrieved with a hungered soul. Rather than lamenting over that which perishes in time, lay up for yourself the imperishable treasures of that heavenly realm that moves and breathes you, wherein you may always find sweet refreshment and rest. Be bold enough to cast off your false self, who would enslave you with an illusory prison born of your mortal senses. Refine your senses with love's pure light, and your body becomes heaven's earthly temple. Remember who you are, simple and free. As you seek the first kingdom of God within you, everything else will be added as you give. Rather than seeking to be seen and outwardly rewarded when you do your good works, turn inward in secret and commune with the giver of life, who openly increases the treasure within your heart. Likewise, do your almsgiving in secret and keep your own counsel. When the harvest of the law of life is given to you, reap of your good works in thankful silence, acknowledging God as the giver. When you fast to cleanse yourself of defilement born of fearful self-loathing and resentment, do it in a spirit of release and gratitude, without false humility and self-righteousness. Judge not your brother, nor attempt to remove the speck of dust in his eye, until you have removed from your own eye the beam that distorts your seeing. Indeed, judge not all. For with the measure that you judge to invalidate another, you shall also be condemned. I am come to prepare my Father's banquet table, even as does the husband who invites his bride to come and have sup with him. Like my Father, I give forth every good thing that comes from the bountiful kingdom that has its foundation within you. You are the salt of the earth when you contribute your full essence to life's feast. I have not come to gather an army, nor have I come to establish peace in this land. Rather, the sword of my mouth shall tear asunder the veil that covers the greater law of the one. Do not follow blind guides who would have you believe that salvation may be found in the traditions of your fathers. To be a blind slave chained to tradition is to fall into a ditch. To see clearly, turn to the light of the sun that dwells within you, which forever lights your way. Reveal your light from beneath its covering, where it may illuminate the path of those who otherwise would fall. Come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. For my yoke of union in God is easy, and my burden is eternal light. I am the light of the world. Come to the fountain of your own light, and know the peace that passes all understanding. For here with me you may drink and find refreshment until you have found your way to the Father, Mother's eternal spring. Cast off your wearisome burdens of guilt, false pride, and self-loathing. Stop kicking as one does a stubborn mule against the pricks of self-condemnation and reclaim your rightful inheritance as a son/daughter of God. Behold these your children who surround me and sit upon my lap. Ye to be as one of these little ones is to be mindful of the present moment, resting in innocence, wherein all opposites are met in one and salvation abides. In the simple way of the lilies and in the innocent play of children, the keys of the kingdom are given and all its riches may be found. Verify all that you seek is within you. Therefore, know yourself. Your body is indeed the temple of God. Simply open the door of your heart and enter in. Your father-mother awaits you. Even now, the father-mother runs out upon the stony path you have trod and welcomes that part of yourself you have judged, prodigal, and returns to your birthright. Once you turn around and begin to press homewards back into the light, and you know this light is the beloved you have futilely sought in the night. The beloved is the good shepherd who leaves the 99 when he knows they are safe at home and seeks the one lost sheep to guide its return to the nurturing hearth of its mother's sacred heart. Though a crown of thorns pierces her heart with the suffering of her children, still does she invite and receive each child without condition. So it is that I am come together and feed the sheep that my father-mother has given to me, returning even the stragglers home in my arms. You need not be surprised at my sayings nor doubt my words, because I interpret the law of your youth. I bring you the good news that you are free to raise up an immortal body of divine light so that you may overcome the illusion of death. Not all who hear my words will understand that of which I plainly speak. Soon, however, all that was spoken of by Enoch, Isaiah, and John the Baptizer shall be made clear. I am come to make the way of the teacher of righteousness plain for you, so that you might not stumble when the day that turns dark is upon you. Rest assured that when that new day comes, you will not be left comfortless. For on that day I shall inaugurate a new covenant. And when you are ready, I shall send my heavenly Mother, the Holy Spirit of truth, who is the intelligence behind and within all things, to be your second comforter. This indeed is the promise that I have received from my Father, Mother, who is a God of love. In the silence after Yeshua announced this promise, there was a great quietude among those present, and I saw many tears on the shining faces of those who received these sayings deeply into their hearts. These words and many more did Yeshua speak to the multitudes that gathered over the remaining months of his public ministry. Wow, what incredible, powerful words. I've not read that much of the Bible, just what was I read bits and bobs of it, and especially when I went to church and everything when I was a little girl. So I remember certain stories of the Bible, but I've never read all of that. So I don't know if that differs to what is in the Bible, but just what amazing, incredible, powerful words that just really resonated with me. So many times I wanted to interrupt when I was reading that, but I just wanted to read it as a whole. And yeah, if you can, just take some time and really integrate that, listen to that, rewind it if you need to, and just really let those words sink in and go within and see what they mean to you, because I think they are so powerful. Well, I have to run, but thank you so much for joining me today. And I'm really looking forward to continuing on with episode 14. I will see you soon. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.